Six Flags New England is the only true major amusement park in the area, and it consists of 12 operating roller coasters, countless flat rides, and plenty of little quirks. Now, I visited this park many times over the 10 plus years I've been going, and on Sunday I drove up to the park for the first time since the 4th of July in 2019. So here's a quick review and overview of a day at Six Flags New England. Now, let's start with the park itself. New England is a smaller Six Flags park in size, but with 12 operating roller coasters and a handful of new flat rides, there is plenty to do. Formerly Riverside Amusement Park, this place has been operating since the 1870s, and honestly, it kind of feels that way. The hillside terrain in the back of the park and the ride placements all feel like things were slowly tacked on years later instead of a centrally planned out area like some of the newer parks you see. Now, a great example is the cramped area around Scream, the park's drop tower, and Thunderbolt, a 1941 wooden coaster. Now, the queue for Thunderbolt kind of feels like they took what was once a 2-row queue and forced it to fit 3 switchbacks for a little bit more capacity in the area. Now, unfortunately, the park doesn't quite have that old school charm though. The black asphalt that covers most of the park makes it feel very much like a Six Flags park. That being said, the areas have a little bit of theming, and especially the stairways to Superman that go around its twister section intertwine really well, and it looks really cool. Now, just don't come here expecting like a Silver Dollar City theming experience. It really is just a Six Flags park for sure. Now, speaking of Six Flags, when they bought the park, they really flooded it with roller coasters, and over the last 15 years, they've kind of slowed down. Since 2005, the park has only received 2 POR relocations, an RMC conversion, and an SNS free spin for coasters. Now, I will save most of my comment on the collection for next week when I rank all of the coasters here, but overall, I stand by my What's Next video in saying that this park really needs a major launch coaster as its next edition, and hopefully it comes soon. Now, I'd put my money on a Skyrocket 2 if it wasn't for the fact there was one about an hour away, so hopefully SNS can come in here and replace those 2 boomerangs with something that everyone will enjoy more, maybe like a Max Force-esque ride. So into the day specifically. Now, we started with a ride on Superman, moved for a couple on Wicked Cyclone, and then at the Joker and Riddlers. Pandemonium and Thunderbolt were both slammed all day as most of the crowds were families, so those had longer waits. But on the thrill coasters, the most we waited was probably around 15 minutes for Superman at the end of the day. While we were able to ride Batman and Thunderbolt after lunch, they tacked on some extra rides with Superman and Wicked Cyclone as well. Most of the day, Wicked Cyclone was a walk-on, and like I said, Superman only really had a line after around 3 o'clock. Now, that being said, I kind of have a bone to pick here with Six Flags and their training of their operations crews. Most times we saw were upwards of 5+ minutes in dispatches on coasters and flat rides alike, without any real reason for the delay too. It felt like a lot of workers were kind of just standing around and watching while people sat in their seats. Now, the real difference between like this park and Cedar Fair Park, specifically we just went to Kings Island in July, how they pump out trains, and under a minute, it's really a staggering difference, and it just makes the whole experience less enjoyable. Now, I'm not trying to rag on workers here, but there weren't a ton of people in the park, and there didn't seem to be any apparent staffing issues. It just seemed like a lot of people didn't care. Now, food lines were also extremely long, but there were definitely a set of people working hard to try to make up the difference on either side. Just a very different set of extremes on either side. Now, I think one of the biggest changes that could really improve the staffing problems would to possibly have a worker get guests into rows a little more evenly for rides. Now, we saw the front and back rows block the queue lines all day, while many of the other rows were going empty till the trains rolled into the station. Now, I'm all for row requests, but if it starts to limit capacity, it's time to push people towards the middle. And not to mention, this park doesn't really have any full-size stations that are capable of handling overflow besides maybe Superman. Now, the only coaster we saw them do this was with Thunderbolt, mostly because there's really nowhere else to put people at all anyway. Now, the park is already limited by some low-capacity rides. Pandemonium is always a minimum 45-minute wait. You have 2 boomerangs and a single train Woody that don't exactly turn out guests. For the first time, visitors were looking to hit every ride at least once. For those first-time visitors looking to hit every ride at least once in only one day, I would highly recommend getting the spinner done first, then maybe the boomerang and Thunderbolt before working your way around to the larger attractions. But by then you can work around at your own preference. Odds are Goliath won't be reopening anytime soon, so don't be too hopeful for that. It was announced it's going to be closed for at least the 2021 season, and in my 10+ years of going here with a dozen visits, it's only been open about once. Batman was closed for the first 4 hours of our day, so we had to backtrack, but usually most rides don't face too much downtime here besides that. Now, the good news is because this park isn't very large and it's kind of stationed in a line, backtracking to beat crowds or get ride credits you missed because of downtime is pretty easy. Compared to walking around a park like Great Adventure, New England feels like it's a third of the size. Now, I think it might be because New England is basically just a strip with a small back section and all the rides are on either side, while most parks are more of a circular layout, but it has always felt like this park is just so easy to go back and forth in. Now anyway, the park itself is fun. It has a very strong top two, but the coaster lineup here is much more quantity than quality overall. Hopefully some of these aging Tacomas can get replaced and really make this park more of a destination to pull some people away from Great Adventure. A lot of people I know from where I am, and I live directly between the two parks, don't even know there's a Six Flags in New England. Now, as of now, the only true unique draw here are those top two coasters. Otherwise, I would be much more inclined to treat this park closer to a park like Six Flags America than one of the true top tier Six Flags park. Now, I'll still probably come here every year or so to see what's new and ride one of my favorite coasters, but maybe if they get a new top 3 ride, it'd be more of a multi-year visit, but for now, I'll probably just stick to making Great Adventure and Hershey those must-visits every year. Just some quick other random thoughts. The food here is very Six Flags. It feels exactly like every other park, but I recommend if you go to a Six Flags park and you're looking to change it up a little bit from that normal park food, try Chop Six. It's a Chinese food style restaurant, but it's decent and it's not very greasy, so it's a nice change. For members, if you're looking for preferred parking, make sure to reserve early because the parking situation for preferred is very small. The regular lot is actually located across the street from the park, and guests have to walk across the bridge, so just make sure you make your reservations early if you're going to. The membership area itself is right when you walk in the front of the park on the right hand side. It's very easy to miss. The first time I signed up for a membership, it took me half an hour to find it. And then the Fast Pass actually has a pickup window for those skip the line passes, so that could help expedite some of the things that really annoy me about Great Adventure. We have to wait in the same line as everyone else, and it gets very long. So that's a little quick summary for Six Flags New England. It's a real mix of good and bad in a smaller size park that could just use some updates, honestly. Now, if you have been here, let me know what your opinion of this park is and how it could be better, or if I got this wrong and it's actually a great park. Now, till next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.